Last week we looked at debit order fraud, and today we're continuing our discussion on credit card fraud. Joining me again in studio is Donovan Marais, Channel Manager at SagePay, and Pragashni Reddy, Head of Business Development at Nedbank Business Banking. Welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Donovan, when do most instances of credit card fraud happen?
Most instances of credit card fraud are with what is known as card not present transactions. And credit card fraud is basically, like we discussed last week with debit order fraud, where somebody would debit and take money off your credit card account without you authorizing it. A card not present transaction is, for instance, on mail order or an online transaction where you purchase something from the internet, your card is not physically present, and then the fraud takes place.
Okay, now there's a thing called 3D Secure for digital payments. What is that?
The 3D is the three domains that are involved. It's basically the merchant's bank or acquiring, or it's the cardholder's bank or issuing, and then it's the cardholder association, which is Visa or MasterCard. When they reroute the client through, it'll go through the browser to the bank so that it will then ask the client for a secret PIN or some secret question that only that client would know, and that would then validate it is in fact the correct cardholder.
And then you got the concept of a floor limit.
Yes.
What is that?
So a floor limit in a store is the maximum amount that can be processed on a person's card without authorization from the bank. So it can be set, for instance, at 5,000 Rand. Anything above that, the bank would have to be contacted to verify that transaction can go through.
And is that a good idea or a bad idea?
It's a very, very good idea.
Why?
It protects the merchant at the end of the day because it protects them against fraudsters that might come in there with a stolen card. So the loss is mitigated. And it also protects the card holder at the end of the day, that if his card gets lost or stolen, that somebody can't go and spend 100,000 Rand on his credit card without him actually authorizing the transaction. And reasonable and decent floor limits are highly advisable in the industry.
So don't you have the issue then where somebody might know what a floor limit is and just use the card, walk through a shopping center and just go from one shop to the next?
You definitely have that. It does happen. But fortunately with debit orders, you've got a dispute period. So you have with credit cards. Master and Visa regulations basically state that you've got 180 days, in effect 6 months, to dispute a credit card transaction. Same process. You'd contact your bank, you'd say to them, look, I've got this transaction, it's gone off my bank account, I don't know what it's for, off my credit card account. The bank would investigate, they would ask for proof that this person did actually authorize the transaction. If it's found that it is a fraudulent transaction, it simply gets returned and the merchant then has to refund the transaction.
I know some algorithms go right down to the fact that if you buy a certain type of products that are unusual, that they will call you. Have you heard about that as a part of the algorithm?
It does happen, where, for instance, if it's a business owner that's in agriculture and then suddenly there's high-tech electronics going through on that account, then a call would be made. It's really based on client profile, and it's very individualized and tailored.
A big part of credit card fraud today, of course, is online. And one of the most important things is maybe an online merchant is not to accept PO boxes. Is that right?
That's right. It's highly advisable never to ship your goods because you don't know who sits at the other end of the internet connection. So don't ship your goods to PO box addresses. I know it's convenient and it's affordable, but you don't know that the person sitting at the other end of this internet connection is actually who he says he is. And if you ship to a PO box address, I mean, it's fairly simple to get a PO box address and goods can get picked up at the post office. Whereas if you use a reputable delivery stream like a courier company that asks for identification and gets you to sign for the slip, an actual human being, you've got recourse if that transaction comes back as a chargeback or a fraudulent transaction.
Chargeback. Talk to me about chargeback. What is that?
Chargeback is basically where the client would say, look, I did not authorize this transaction, and the bank then reverses the transaction. There's various reasons why chargebacks can happen, i.e. you ordered a green bottle and received a blue bottle, so you didn't receive the product that you ordered, or you received a 2-liter bottle and only received a 300 ml bottle, so the product is not correct. You sometimes get chargebacks as well for where the product was not delivered. So you order something overseas, it takes 6 months, the product doesn't get here, but your card's been debited. And then you can go to the bank and say, look, I've never received the goods. The bank will then contact the merchant on the other end and say, look, give us proof that you actually did ship this product. And if they can't provide proof of it, the transaction gets charged back.
So what happens if I go online now, I go to one of those websites, I don't want to mention any particular name, where you can buy second-hand goods. Right? Somebody's selling it, and you're buying what they're selling, they put it online. And there's a beautiful picture of the thing, and when it arrives, it's nothing like what you saw.
That is one example of where chargeback would be sufficient.
And you've got 6 months to do that?
You've got 6 months to dispute a transaction and charge it back, yes.
Okay. Now, last week we spoke about the debit order, and that the only way to work it out was to go and sit there now, and I have to go tick, I did that, I did that, I did that. It's the same thing now for my credit card.
Yes, it is. You do need to check your credit card statements to check for unusual transactions, and it's important, I think, from a client or a business perspective, to manage those accounts. And as we've also found is that in the industry now there are different packages that actually match for business the different amounts that are going off the accounts, so that you're able to then pick up the unusual transactions. For a client, it's much quicker, it's fewer transactions, and it's really money that would be saved, and just in terms of protecting the client.
The App Store phenomenon now, there's a lot of $9.99 and $3.99 kind of transactions. Is that now also an issue around people understanding that and just also putting those kind of transactions through your credit card?
I don't think so, Lon. I think, let's look at the App Store first of all. You can't load a credit card onto the App Store or any one of the App Stores without that card being verified or validated first. So if we look at the Apple App Store, they usually put through a small amount of money and then refund it again, just to make sure that this card number is actually a valid card transaction. If you purchase something via the App Store and you're not happy with it, the merchant that sells it, let's look at Apple again, usually has a policy in place where if there's valid reason, they'll refund you. And if you're not happy with it, then you can charge it back.
You said something just now that they put it through and then refund it.
Correct, yes.
That's why I get that.
Yes.
I couldn't understand why these guys do that.
It's put $1 through your account and refund $1, just to make sure that that card number is actually a valid card number, that they can process it. Just to get back onto the 180-day dispute period, the reason for that being is we live in a digital era, we buy things online. That could come from anywhere in the world. And we all know how the postal service works, and imagine it in another country where there also might be a problem with the postal service. So that, number one, a reason for the 180-day period. Number two, the card issuing bank. If you've got with Beep Bank a card and you purchase something in France, Beep Bank actually needs to settle that transaction, the card issuing bank. And there might be a delay period in that. I think the maximum delay, and correct me if I'm wrong, is 14 days or something that they have 14. To actually settle the transaction. But still, that's 14 days from when you process the transaction. And therefore, the reason for the 180 days dispute period that the client has got to go and query any transaction.
There's also a conversion period when you spend in foreign currency.
Correct.
So that's normally around it's normally within 24 hours, but then there's also a 72-hour delay. So it just factors in where the card is being used and for what.
Donovan, Prakashji, thanks so much for being on the show again.
Thank you very much
Thank
for having us.
So my impressions for today are around the fact that people will pay for predictability. Now, if you look at the Enviroson interview, what came out for me there was the fact that people would be prepared to pay a premium to know that the ashes that they receive are little fluffy, my little fluffy, and not a mixture of a whole bunch of pets. So predictability is an important part of the entrepreneurial experience or the client experience, and they're prepared to pay for it. Now let's talk about this, because if you look at how humans consume and how we've evolved, symmetry is a very important part of how we consume as human beings. So we look for symmetry, and you think about, why is this table square, and why is this a symmetrical shape? And the reason for that is that humans want symmetry, because then we can predict where this table ends, and we can start predicting how to negotiate around the objects around us. So I'm just putting it at the back of your mind that symmetry is a very important part of how we consume. There's another second concept which I want to talk about, which is around the concept of creating order out of chaos. If you think about it, if you ever have been to a game reserve and there's there's lawn and then there's the bush, there's a sense of comfort that we take from the lawn that is separate from the bush, that bush tent or that bush house that we're staying in, how there's order here and chaos there. Humans enjoy that place where we are on the edge of chaos. There's a guy called Dee Hock who was the founder of Visa, and he termed the term a chaotic environment. That's the edge of chaos and the beginning of order, and that's where creativity happens and where opportunity happens. So I want to bring across the symmetry and chaotic, or order and chaos, the concept of the two. So when we are building our businesses, what we have to understand is that clients are prepared to pay extra for predictability, and they will pay for consistency. Last week, I think it was, we had Saul Mervis from a grill house, and he spoke about his focus on consistent product. People are prepared to pay for consistency. We want to know that if I open this water, it tastes the same as that water, that we will pay for that consistency. How do we do this? We create systems. Systems are a very important part of creating predictability. Standards, and I talk about published standards. Talk about your published standards. So what this water should have on it, it should have a standard here, and it does. It has the SABS approval here, that there's a standard by which the water adheres to. And published guarantees, we guarantee that you will get this, or we guarantee that you will get that. People will pay for that predictability. So if we guarantee our work, that it gives a lot of comfort. And finally, the fact that you train your staff in order to create a consistent product. That's it from me. Remember, if you think it, write it down and make it a reality. A warm welcome back. Our guests today are Dean Webb, Dave Oxenham, and Mark Slaughter from Enviroson Penn Crematorium and Memorial Park. Did I say Penn?
Penn.
A warm welcome back. Come on, did you get the pun about a warm welcome back? Did you get that? Okay. Our guests today are Dean Webb, Dave Oxenham, and Mark Slaughter from Enviroson Penn Crematorium. Penn.
Are you serious? Give me the pen. So tongue twister.
Bring back the coffee! Bring back the coffee!
Do you want me to do the
Pen.
I will do that again. All right,
Is it very
let's
profitable
go.
for you?
Okay. A warm welcome back. Come on, did you get the pun around warm? Okay, good.
The Big Small Business Show was proudly brought to you by MTN Business. Your success is our passion. And the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. Develop, influence, lead.